Well, welcome to the Followup podcast. My name is Hayden. I am the worship director here at Arbor Church, and today I'm joined by Michael Solis, our children's director, and Ryan Plants, our senior pastor and speaker from Sunday. So if you were not here on Sunday, you might not be aware we started a new series that we are calling Better Together.
Yep, that's right.
We ended Summer on the Mount because summer is officially over. We're done with it. We're moving on. We're in the fall.
Yeah,
so,
we're jumping the gun, you know?
We do not want to do fall off the mount.
No, not fall off the mount. That would not be good. And,
No.
you know, fall might not really technically start for another week, but, you know, we want to get on it.
Well,
you know?
we're proactive.
Yes.
We are go-getters. We are going to bring it in early.
That's right.
So we started this new series called Better Together. It's typical for us on the podcast when we start a new series to just hear a little elevator pitch on what the series is about. So, Ryan, would you do the honors of just kind of describing what you wanted to communicate to the church body through this series?
Yeah, Better Together. I think our hope is that we would have a renewed conviction that we are truly better together, that life isn't better in isolation, but it's better lived with other people, and who better than the people that God has gathered us together here at Arbor.
And this is coming off of a series, Summer on the Mount, which was this cool series that we got to do where we got to just look at what Jesus said in one of his most famous sermons. And then we talked about how it's kind of meta that we're creating a sermon on a sermon.
On a sermon, yeah.
But we went from, and this is going to lead into the next question of what do you prefer preaching on? We went from a very easy topic, right, of this is what Jesus is teaching to now more of a topical, we're talking about themes, less of like, here's what Jesus said, now let's apply it to our lives. What do you prefer to do? Are you more in the realm of, I love to just take some scripture, expound on it, and go for it? Or here's a pointed idea that we're looking towards, and let's talk about that.
Yeah, I prefer jumping off of a text and using a text first and going from that and moving forward. I think it's an easier work at first because you're really just trying to wrestle with the text and what's the message of the text, and you want your message of the message to be the message of the text.
Yes.
But that's not to say that I think it's a better or more valuable teaching than addressing a specific topic. I just think, honestly, addressing a specific topic just requires more work to ensure that the message you're saying is the message of what God would want communicated through his word, not the message I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot easier to fall into that trap. You can fall into that trap on both sides, though.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Well, which is interesting because we divide these messages into like two schools, and there's topical and there's exegetical, right? And we just got out of an exegetical series on Jesus who was sharing a topical message, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And now we're into this topical series. And you kind of described why it was so important, but was there anything you coming into Arbor 2 months ago and hearing from us as a staff where we're kind of at, where we feel like the congregation, what they're feeling and going through, that made this a very deliberate decision of, I think that we need to hop into this series?
Yeah, I think with the fall comes restarting of so many things, right? Kids' sports, kids' school, work takes on a new level of intensity after coming out of that sort of summer kind of season. And so naturally with the church, we want to work together and work with where everyone's at. And so we kind of do the same thing. Summer, people are traveling. Naturally, the weather's nicer out. And so we want to kind of ramp things up. And I think this is a new and exciting season for our church. And we've seen a lot of new faces. And, you know, my hope is that for those who have been faithful with Arbor over these last few years, that there would be a reinvigorated sense that, you know what, I'm committing further to what God has for me here at this church. And for those who are new, providing an opportunity for them to jump in and jump on what God's doing here.
Yeah, and what's interesting about just the first week that we've gotten into of Better Together is after the message we had, sorry for all those online only people, but we had some connective time in the lobby. And I think that's, I don't think there's many people out there that would disagree that life is better with people in community. But one of the hardest things to do is to actually get into community, right? They
Sure.
say once you get out of college or even high school, it becomes a lot more challenging to find
does.
friends,
Yep.
to find people that you're going to do life with. And I appreciated the fact that we kind of took away some of the awkwardness and some of the difficult on-ramp by having, like we kind of bribed the congregation with donuts of like, if you want to come, if you want to get a
Hey,
donut,
whatever it
come,
takes,
yeah,
right? Whatever
exactly.
it takes, right?
But that's the challenging part. I don't think that it's necessarily a laziness or complacency thing. It's just kind of challenging to get ingrained into a community, right?
Yeah, well, it's something that, like you said, it really does come natural to most people as they're navigating elementary, high school, if they get to go to college, that sort of environment. But as you get older and work takes up more of your life, for those people who have families and spouses and children, it becomes difficult to plug in and do life together with a lot of other people. And I think over the last few years, it's been harder as we've kind of had to be in isolation.
Yeah.
But like you said, Hayden, I think we long for this. Our hearts, deep down inside, we really long for this.
Yeah.
But the same thing that we long for is the same thing that has burned us or hurt us in the past. And so there is a sense of, Lord, I'm going to trust that this is your plan. This is how you've set things up, and I'm going to step back into that.
Yeah.
Did either of you guys notice a change in you after the isolation? I know for me, I almost had to, I felt like I needed to relearn how to connect with people again. Like, this is where I ask you questions. You know?
Yeah.
Well, for me, like, I love interpersonal connection, and I am extroverted by nature. Like, I love being around people, but I am awful at small talk and getting to know people. So for me, I noticed there was a lot of people struggling after isolation. And it was like, this is awesome. Like, I'm not the sore thumb in the lobby. Like, everyone sucks at small talk now and like opening conversation. But no, I did, like, I noticed it for myself. And I noticed it for other people that I think we do kind of struggle after isolation, the connection again. And I think also it's that, breaking the rust off the gears of like, we've just been isolated. And now it's like we're exercising that new muscle of like, okay, we got to get back into community and figure out a way to do this again.
Yeah, and I think getting back into community has been the thing that I've really longed for myself. Out of COVID, finding a group of people to really engage with and do life with. And so I'm hoping that that's something that as we have just moved here, we find here, but that other people who are getting involved or who have been a part of Arbor and have sort of seen that fade away over the last couple of years, they see that be a thing that they're able to reincorporate into their lives.
What I appreciated about the message yesterday was I think you did a great job of outlining how community, church, whatever size or group of people you want to put together, it truly is, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Yeah. We as a church, I guess I'll pull back farther, but we as a staff, like, we can only get so much done without the help of volunteers and people, right? And the church can only take so much in terms of growth and being able to accomplish goals without also serving as well, right? And I think you did a good job of using the scripture where it talks about the body and how we all have a purpose. But I think it's helpful for us as we are growing again and we're seeing more people come through the doors, that it's a reminder for some people, if you are tired, take the rest, get recovered. But also, like, this is a mutually involved act that we're doing on a Sunday through Sunday. It has to be both sides, right? It has to be the staff. We have been selected as leadership to help with this, but we need the help. And so do your brothers and sisters that you're sitting next to that might need the break. And I think that's something that we're all going to have to relearn as we get back into community. And we have groups going and Sunday mornings and every sort of programming. There needs to be the reminder of we have to do this together and we all are beneficial. When did you land on kind of sinking into that piece of scripture?
I think we briefly talked about it as a staff. One of the things that we're trying to do here on staff is in about a couple weeks out, look at what that teaching is going to be on a Sunday and really brainstorm and talk through from sort of a multifaceted perspective rather than just the teacher sort of in a cave on their own trying to figure that out as a team. Really kind of creatively think through where are we at as a people, as a community, and what do we need to hear. And I believe at one of the meetings, someone brought up 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And I was thinking about Jesus and the feet washing scene, but I thought that as I kind of read about those more, that 1 Corinthians passage just really seemed to be just a really wonderful passage that explains our mutuality and interdependence, but also in a way that is like, Paul kind of sets it up. I mean, we talked about like a sermon on a sermon with Jesus and teaching about that, but like here you have like this really cool word picture of our church, a local church being a body. And that I think is a really just interesting picture to just explore, you know?
I loved that illustration. And I actually even got to thinking about, I feel like I've been involved in church bodies before where you got a lot more hands than feet kind of thing. To give an idea of what my brain was doing as you were unpacking that. And I could totally see how it's like, well, hey, I'm another hand. And so, you know, I'm one of the more important parts here kind of thing. But as you kept going, hearing how Paul talked about, no, those if you will, feet in this example, there are less of them. They're even more important because of this. You know, you need those if you're going to be moving anywhere.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and I think it was less about Paul's, I think, emphasis is not so much about uniformity and everyone being the same, but this idea that like we really are unique in our gifting and our personality and our passions, and it's a blessing when we can come together and enjoy the gift of other people's gifts. And that's what they're for, is they're gifts, and they're not just gifts for us. In fact, I actually think their primary purpose is to be used to give to other people. And that's when we really begin to find that blessing that Jesus talks about in John 13, when he says, if you understand these things and do them, you will be blessed. Because it is truly a blessing to be a blessing to other people with the gifts that God's given us.
Do you think, with regard to specifically serving, because I know better together is our current theme, but if we were to land on serving, do you think that it'd be possible to unpack this for even more weeks? Because as you're saying that, I'm thinking, gosh, it'd be great to find ways to help people even identify maybe gifts they don't even have yet.
Oh, absolutely. I could see us doing a series at some point down the road, maybe even at the turn of the year, unpacking like identity and God's unique calling on our lives and how to discern that. And how to step into that and be obedient to that call.
That's awesome.
For sure.
Just for some context on this particular text when we're referring to the body, in your research and your reading through of this, Ryan, very common, especially in that letter, but in Paul's writing, to either bring new learning or what he's saying can be corrective or pointed. So when he's talking about the different identities that we have serving in the church, in your reading, was this more pointing out, hey, the church in Corinth, you guys aren't doing this right? Or is this more of like, hey, in case you guys didn't understand?
Oh, I think it was in the church in Corinth, he was correcting their understanding that certain body parts, quote unquote, were more valuable. And I don't think it's that we are to find out like, what body part am I? Like that's not the point, right? Like, and I think it's easy to be like, well, we need to be the feet of Jesus, or we need, but like that's not the point. The point is the unity within the diversity. And that's the idea, and the interdependence amongst the diversity. And so I do think it was, it was a problem. It was a problem because there were certain kind of showier gifts that people had in the church in Corinth that were elevated as more important than other gifts, like perhaps the gift of like faith and prayer and just humble service and helping others and hospitality. These were not the gifts that were supposedly elevated in the church in Corinth. They were the showier gifts, the gifts that, they said, well, if you were, really a spiritually mature Christian, you would be doing these things. And so I get why you're doing those things down there, because you're not at our level yet. And so, it was corrective in the sense that, no, like, just because this gift is flashier in display does not mean it is more essential than some of these smaller gifts.
It's interesting to think about. Do you feel like that came into your message at all? Like some of the correctiveness? Did you feel that there was any intentional correction of not necessarily Arbor, because you obviously are new here, but just where we're at as a church in the 21st century of, do you think that that's an attitude that we have of like, if you're on stage, that's the flashier type of service, but if you're cleaning bathrooms or pointing people where to park, maybe that's less flashy? Do you think that's something that we struggle with today?
I think it's something definitely worth exploring, because I do think that we are people who naturally create hierarchies in our minds and in our hearts. Like that's just who we are as people. And so we're going to do that. We're going to value the individual who preaches probably in our own minds more than the person who's helping out in the nursery. And I'm not endorsing that. I'm just saying, like, we fall into this trap so easily. But everyone is essential. And I think that I didn't spend a lot of time providing that kind of correction in that, because I do think that oftentimes we come into a church and we think, well, they've already got all the things figured out. They don't need me. And that's the thing I wanted to correct, was that, like, I mean, Arbor's not a big church. Even if you attend a really big church, if the Lord has allowed that thing to kind of be the size that it is, and you feel called to be a part of that body, you have a role to play in that body.
Totally.
You know, same thing here at Arbor. You know, if you're coming and you're exploring being a part of our church, you have a role to play if God's calling you here. You know, all the spots aren't filled. And one thing I really wanted to try to make clear, and I'm not sure it was entirely clear, was, you know, we had that kind of gathering, that connect time afterward, and you could get involved in kids ministry or our worship, media, tech, hospitality, all those things. I really wanted to make clear, like, if nothing seems to be clicking and there's another passion inside of you to do something else and bless this body with your gifts, then let's figure that out. Let's explore that.
That's awesome.
What was interesting yesterday is I had a worship team volunteer come up to me, and they wanted to chat with me because they found your message challenging to them, or at least something went off inside of them. And they had said, I feel bad because when I am on the worship team, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like I'm making coffee or I'm putting the signs out. Like, it's easy for me and it's fun for me. And after today's message, I kind of feel bad that, like, it doesn't feel like work or service. And I was like, no, that means, like, you're in the spot you need to be. Like, that is.
And if they need some more work, send them my way.
But, like, it's like, for me, if I were to be leading a kid's lesson at Arbor Kids, it would feel like work for me, because that's just not my gifting. Like, I'm not gifted in teaching children, right? But I imagine there's probably a ton of your volunteers, Michael, who they love what they do. And, like, that's a highlight of their week.
And I would say maybe a slight corrective on this is the thing God is going to call us to do to serve other people might not always be the thing that we, like, find to be fun. And so I do think that there is something to say about aligning how we serve others in the local body with our gifting and our talents. But I'm going to go ahead and guess that, like, Jesus wasn't, like, preternaturally gifted at washing feet. You know? Like, like he seemed to be a pretty good teacher. Seemed to be quite good at healing people and casting out demons and you know, forgiving the world of their sins. You know what I mean? Like, some incredible things.
No, because there's part of this, right? Like, there is a part where it's like you're in your wheelhouse now because you're serving in a gifting of sorts. But then also, I think that there are people who are totally gifted who maybe don't love what they're doing that they're gifted in necessarily. There's a piece that I just, like, the word obedience comes to mind.
Yes.
It's like, God's asking me to do this. And maybe it's not even, like, for the rest of your life. It's for a season. You know?
Exactly.
Well, and I think that in every element of where we serve in a church, there's going to be tasks within that service that we don't enjoy. Like, I think about, you know, if you love to cook for people and you are cooking food for them and you watch them smile after the first bite, and that's your wheelhouse, like you also have to do the dishes afterwards. And you probably don't like doing the dishes, right? But that's a part of like, I love playing music, but I hate wrapping chords. Like I wish that I could have someone else just come up and wind cables for me afterwards. But like that
serve opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. If you like orderly, tight wounded chords, I have a place for you.
We've got a spot for you.
Yeah. But that's the truth, right? Like maybe there might be one element of what you do that you love, but there's always gonna be hard things and things you don't want to do. But that's part of the service, right? Like I don't have this prima donna worship team where they just come up and play. We have everything set up for them, and then they just leave. There's tasks that we all have to do, right? And that's the same for children's, for parking, for hospitality. Like,
that's a good point.
And I want to say to that as well, like there's something to obedience, and I think you can go too far where, like, if you hate kids, I don't want you serving in the kids ministry.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I feel like I need to be obedient to what Jesus is telling me. I'm like, no, if you hate kids.
Yes. Yeah, that is true.
So.
You should not be white knuckling your way through a Sunday service. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we are getting close to wrapping things up. Is there anything else that you guys thinking about? I know that Michael typically has some questions. I saw him look at his phone.
No, I just want to say I also love that you brought up, Ryan, if you feel like you're weary because you're in a place where you're waiting.
Yeah.
I love that you said that because I've been there myself before. Like it's almost like the sense, I feel like you kind of gave this analogy a little bit earlier. It's like, well, I haven't been working out in a while, which I haven't been working out in a while. And you start again, you're not at full strength when you start working out. And there's this like, gosh, it's just, I feel like there's fatigue. So does that mean I'm not ready to serve?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
No, just you got to work that muscle a little bit and jump in with us.
Yeah, we were talking about that during our staff meeting.
Yeah.
And I think there are plenty of people who are in a spot where they need to focus on their interior life with the Lord and spiritual healing in their hearts and in their minds. But I think there are a lot of us who coming out of this season are having to exercise some new muscles and it feels fatiguing, but it's good.
Yep.
And there's a weariness in that waiting, and even there's like a fatigue after you jump out of that waiting. And so, the last thing I would say is I would just encourage anyone who is a part of our service on Sunday or listen to the sermon and is listening to this now, I would just encourage you again to begin to prayerfully consider joining a team here at Arbor and serving. Obviously, there are plenty of spaces where we need you to step up, but this is more of a where's God called you and gifted you. Yeah. Jesus promises us an abundant life. He promises us in John 13 that he will bless us when we are obedient to this call, when we humble ourselves and serve others. And so, that's our calling as people who are set aside. We're vocational ministers. Like, it might get annoying, but that's why we're here, to remind you to do that, because ultimately, like, we have to remind ourselves to step up and continue to step into those roles and be faithful to that, because that's Jesus best for us. Yeah. And that's what we're called to pursue.
So my question there would be, if someone decides to enter into this, they're like, I think I'm what you're talking about, we're in the waiting, and they jump in and they start serving, and week 1, week 2, week 3 comes in, they're like, gosh, I do feel that fatigue you're kind of talking about. What would your advice be to them if they came to you and said, Ryan, I feel like I haven't broken that fog yet? Yeah,
what I would say is, you can only really figure that out in community. Okay. People who know you and people who know like where you're at. And to that extent, I would say this coming week, we're going to talk about growing together and the value of being together with other people. That's just not something that I think we can really discern on our own. We need other people to be able to help us process and assess and discern what's going on in our hearts and lives. And those people, I believe God uses, like per that quote I shared from John Ortberg, God uses other people in our lives to help us discern, hey, no, Ryan, you're in a bad space and you'd actually be better if you got some counseling and you just took some time off and sat on the bench and just got restored and healed. Or some people say, no, Ryan, keep pressing forward. Yeah. Like you're doing the right thing. I felt this before. There is wisdom in counsel around you, especially godly counsel, people who are following after Jesus. Yeah, maybe that's in a group. Maybe that's in some kind of community here at Arbor. That. Yeah.
I like to say we did not plan that transition to next week. I just want to put that out there.
That was natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the script says that you shouldn't be saying that right now, so you're accurate on that.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna get back on the script. So, do you guys have anything else before I close it out?
No, that was it. I think it's been a good conversation about, God's call in our lives to serve together. And, I'm really excited about this coming week. Brian is going to be teaching.
Yes, he is.
And looking forward to hearing what God's laid on his heart, talking about growing together.
All right, well, thank you guys for listening to the Follow Up podcast, and we will see you guys next week.